Ladies and gentlemen, students of philosophy, and those with a taste for the absurdities of history, allow me to draw your attention to one of the more curious anecdotes that has come down to us from antiquity, the death of Chrysippus, the illustrious Stoic philosopher. Chrysippus, a towering figure in the development of Stoic thought, is remembered not just for his intellectual contributions, but also for the bizarre and somewhat darkly comedic circumstances surrounding his demise. The commonly recounted tale, often truncated in modern retellings, informs us that Chrysippus died from laughter. He allegedly saw a donkey eating figs and, struck by the humor of the scene, exclaimed, "Give the drunken donkey some pure wine to wash down the figs." This utterance alone, so we are told, was enough to provoke a fit of laughter so severe that it led to his death. But I posit, dear readers, that this rendition of the story buries the lead and misses a critical and infinitely more plausible detail: the role of his obedient servant in carrying out this absurd command. In the ancient world, servants were not merely hired help, but often slaves, bound to follow the whims and commands of their masters with an unquestioning obedience that today we would find both cruel and pitiable. Imagine, then, the scene. Chrysippus, amused by the sight of the donkey and emboldened by the casual cruelty of the aristocracy, issues his ridiculous order. The humor for him begins here, no doubt, but the true comedic climax, and the fatal punchline, comes not from his jest, but from its earnest execution. Picture the dutiful servant, accustomed to a life of unwavering compliance, hearing his master's command. Without a hint of hesitation or incredulity, the servant fetches a goblet of pure wine and approaches the donkey with all the solemnity that the bizarre situation can muster. What ensues is an absurdly comical tableau. A servant, in all seriousness, attempting to pour wine into the mouth of a bemused and likely uncooperative donkey. It is in this execution, I submit, that Chrysippus's laughter found its deadly crescendo. The juxtaposition of the donkey's natural stupidity with the servant's meticulous obedience created a scene so ludicrously incongruous that it transcended mere amusement and spiraled into uncontrollable hilarity. Chrysippus, already chuckling at his own wit, would have been overwhelmed by the sight of his servant solemnly trying to fulfill such a ridiculous order. His laughter, fed by the absurdity of the scene, became a riptide from which he could not escape. This interpretation not only makes the story more credible, but also adds a layer of poignant critique. The obedience of the servant, a direct result of the servitude and dehumanization inherent in ancient slavery, underscores the cruelty and caprice of the master. It is a grim reminder that even the laughter of the privileged could be born of the indignities imposed on those below them. Chrysippus's death, while seemingly farcical, thus carries a darker undertone. A final, fatal laugh at the expense of a system that permitted such absurd disparities of power. In retelling this story, modern versions often gloss over the pivotal role of the servant, perhaps in an attempt to sanitize the narrative for contemporary sensibilities. They present Chrysippus as a man who died laughing at his own wit, a solitary figure caught in the throes of self-amusement. Yet this sanitization strips the tale of its richer, more complex reality. The true humor and tragedy of the story lies not in Chrysippus's remark alone, but in the ludicrous and earnest actions it provoked. To appreciate the full, nuanced humor of Chrysippus's death, one must acknowledge the societal context in which it occurred. The servile obedience of the servant, the absurdity of the scene, and the fatal hilarity that ensued all intertwined to create a narrative that is both deeply human and tragically comical. It is a story that reminds us of the thin line between comedy and tragedy, and of the sometimes deadly consequences of laughter. So let us not shy away from this more likely version of events. Let us recognize the role of the servant, the absurd obedience that led to such a farcical end, and the societal structures that made such obedience possible. In doing so, we honor the full, rich tapestry of human folly and frailty that lies at the heart of this ancient anecdote. Chrysippus's death, with all its absurdity, becomes not just a tale of laughter, but a poignant reflection on the human condition and the often cruel caprices of fate.